Jack Parsons got me on the moon. Jack Parsons got me on the moon. To escape the gravitational pull of the Earth is one thing. But my God, to escape the limitations of consciousness and the nervous system is quite something else. When Parsons and Hubbard went into the desert to create the Moonchild, they created the Moonchild. The last of the demons defeated. The last of the demons defeated.
Yo, Pan, I am a man. Do as thou wilt as a great God can.
Jack Parsons wasn't merely a rocket scientist who dabbled in the occult. Rather, Parsons was an occultist who dabbled in rocket science. Hello everybody, this is a kind of a request video. A lady called Esther, I think she lives in Holland, asked me about this, and something I wanted to talk about for a while. Someone had mentioned about a year back about angels. Now, there's a real cult around angels now. You have, particularly in the New Age, you have a lot of, very much among women, this whole thing of they call down this angel or that angel and whatever. And that's been going on for about 10 years now, maybe about longer, but it really taken off in the last decade. And it's like this big obsession with like Gabriel or Michael and all these kinds of other angels. And they have various attributes associated with them. Then you have also, about a few months ago, an article started appearing on the internet. This was a very funny one on the true nature of evil, angels, sorry. And rather than them being, I don't know, like, knights in shining armor, as they're often portrayed, they portrayed them exactly as they are in the scriptures. Because you all know Christians don't read the Bible. They just say they do. They don't know anything that's in it, really. Now, that's the thing with Christians. They're the most unscholarly fate that ever existed. They all like love the Bible and die and swear on the Bible, yet they have no idea what's in it. And one of the things that's in it is the descriptions of angels, and they're shown as like, this very strange, surrealist things, like, kind of like multi-winged feathered birds with like loads of eyes or one eye, or there's the connecting wheels and the fire in the sky and all kinds of things. Well, that's a classic kind of like disturbance in the field, and there's a thing called the uncanny valley where the mind can't actually figure out what it's seeing, and sometimes the mind will invent an image there to fill it. So the thing with the angels, okay, now angels are so central to Abrahamic religions, particularly Islam. They're massive. The Malkut, I think they're called in Islam. They're massive in Islam and also in Zoroastrianism, and of course Christianity and the Elohim from the Jewish Torah. But you know me, I go back further again, and there seems to be that the concept of angels it's interesting. It's almost like this is one of the things that the pagans have taken off Abrahamic religions. The angels. There is a series of manuscripts, papyrus, from about 400 BC to about 100 AD, and it's a codex of Greek magic and grimoires that have been collected. And although they do extend into the Christian period, there's no Christianity in them because they're before really Christianity. They happened like when Christianity was still nothing, even though it extended into that period. And they are basically what we call the Modern Grimoire, the concept of spells and magic and protection spells and invoking certain angels and entities, and as angels are in it. Amazingly enough, the invocations are using the Jewish Torah angels, just as we know them, today in the Christianity, as Michael, Gabriel, and all the others. But they specifically refer to them and treat them as gods, and this is real interesting stuff. Now we know for a fact that Lucifer is a pagan god, but it's also a fallen angel within Christian mysticism post the Reformation. There's no mention of Lucifer at all prior to the King James Bible. And that's been now attributed to, well, it's now known to be a mistranslation of a Hebrew term where they put Lucifer in instead of another Jewish word that they didn't understand, a Hebrew word. And therefore Lucifer becomes this fallen angel. But in paganism, he's a god. I've done numerous videos on this, so you don't even have to ask me about him. But the fact that this Grimoire Codex from ancient Greeks refers to the Jewish angels as gods is a huge hint. Now, in early forms of biblical texts and the early forms of the Torah, there's constant mention to Jehovah, Yahweh, or whatever he's called, whatever he's referred to as, to Adonai, etc., as being you will worship me above all other gods. Now that's a huge giveaway right there that Judaism came out of paganism, and who are all the other gods? And so this is interesting. So there's a polytheistic admission in the Torah of a multiple pantheon of gods, of which Yahweh is the only one you're supposed to worship. And this is how this Greek magical codex grimoire, papyri, treats the angels. It treats them as a god force whom you can invoke in order to, just like any other god, to represent or to deal with an issue. Like, for instance, just like it's exactly the same as what the New Age types are doing today, invoking the angels. They're basically pagans, but they just don't know it. And it's the same concept with an ancient pagan Greece. They said these Jewish angels, these are handy for invocations. They're probably gods, and there was probably some kind of other racial or historical legacy there that did lead back to them being complementary deities with whatever the original name was, with Jehovah, Yahweh. Now, this is exactly the same as what's happening today. However, you see, the thing is that the paganism that even from its earliest versions, paganism was almost like chaos magic, or the chaos paganism that I subscribe to, that I'm kind of promoting. In that, if you were a Roman pagan and you landed in Britain and you came into contact with the god Lu or something, and you would say, "Oh, that's a handy god. I'll incorporate that into my pantheon." And this is how Minerva, the Roman goddess, became Athena. Athena. She was Athena in the Greeks, and then the Romans made her Minerva. Same archetype. Well, the Celtic Britons adopted her too, and so did the Gauls. So a Roman a goddess, was adopted into their pantheon, and so that's very common with pagans, that they'll say, "Oh, I like your god. I think I will start." It's like a football team, and it's like, "Oh, I like your player. I'm going to sign him." It's the same. That's how pagans are so tolerant of other religions, and that's why you still see this today in things like Hinduism, where lots of Hindus say, "Oh, I like what Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount. I like Jesus too." And even though they're practicing Hindu, they're not a Christian. They might have a picture of Jesus in the house somewhere because they like the Sermon on the Mount. This kind of thing. And so that's the pagan way. Now, paganism is not necessarily polytheistic either. Like the last pagan religion of Ireland, the Crom Cruach, was a monotheistic religion, just like the last pagan religion of Persia, Mithraism, was a monotheistic religion. So that's another misunderstanding of paganism, that paganism is polytheistic always. No, it's not. It can be monotheistic as well. The thing is that it doesn't subscribe to the Abrahamic aspects. So like there's huge like there's all these things have been twisted ever since like you know like the way today if you were to ask anybody and even most people that call themselves pagans what does paganism stand for? And the media would probably go nature worship. That's not true at all. That's just a thing that came out of the hippies in the '60s that had its origins sort of far back in the early 1800s when you had like new romanticism type things like the ancients who were kind of like Presbyterian mystics, artists like William Blake was kind of one of them, and Samuel Palmer, and this whole thing of like there was a sacredness of the countryside, and a lot of this spawned out of the industrialization of England. They were seeing like Blake's dark satanic mills. There was the industrialization of England and the chopping down of forests and the burning of the coal and the mining and the moving people away from the country and into cities, industrial centers. At the very, very beginning of this, groups like the Ancients and people like Samuel Palmer and Blake, were kind of like artists who were against this. Where Samuel Palmer created a kind of almost like a rural mysticism around it. And there's some in his beautiful paintings like Moonlight in a Cornfield, and Midnight Mass, and it was like going back to sort of like he was treating the countryside, as particularly around Kent, as being sacred as it was being under threat from industrialization, and of course that was echoed later on in the likes of Tolkien and in what his whole kind of Luddite mentality towards the destruction of the countryside, but and technology and the advance in modern technology, but that was a misunderstanding that was what paganism is fundamentally three things: sacrifice, giving up something to attain something, reincarnation, and magic. The belief that you can that individuals rather than a god can alter the material fabric of the universe, and hence how angels became into that Greco-Roman code, that Greco-magical codex. That the idea was, this would be a handy archetype because within the Jewish pantheon there was specific they were it's so weird how much they were like gods. Each individual within each angel Elohim within Judaism had a specific purpose, like the protection of children, the protection of crops, and that's like pagan. That's as pagan as anything. That's practically Hinduism, like the way Hindus would evoke Ganesh, the remover of obstacles to deal with a problem. It's the same thing. So the Greek pagans were reading up on Judaism, found out about these Jewish angels, and said, "Oh, they're really handy for magic." See, magic is always central to paganism, and incorporated it into their pantheon of, gods, new gods for this kind of magical text that they were this grimoire, which I said it's over a very long period. It wasn't written by one person. It was an assemblage of Greco magic from the pagan era. So don't think it was a book by one individual. So that shows that it was universal in how it developed and how it took off. So the thing was the angels today, people do these angel card readings, they're only as good as how much you understand you're dealing with. And there are inherent dangers, okay? Like, there are also negative entities, call them demons or whatever you want to call them, but they will lie to you and tell you what you want to hear. They will tell you what you. So you're going to say, "Oh, the Archangel Michael, is that you? Make something happen," and a picture will fall off a wall, and you say, "Michael is here." Well, that could be an entity like a demon. Almost certainly will be. And you look, it's like there's so many idiots in the Luciferian, edge lord fucking. I'm a Luciferian. I invoke Lucifer. There's no way a mortal can invoke a god, okay? No way. And if you try to invoke some gods or goddesses, they will destroy you. You can tap into their power as an inspirational force, but you cannot summon them. This is the thing. These people think they can summon gods. You try to summon the goddess Diana, and believe me, it won't end pleasant for you. And this is why so many of these New Age ratbags, not New Age, Wiccan ratbags, are all psychologically destroyed and in a mess, and their relationships are falling apart because they're trying to invoke Diana or Hecate. You don't mortals. We're talking about energy here now. These are just names and terms for energy forces. So, like, think of it that way. And a mortal cannot summon a god. It's just a supreme insult, to that god. Like pointing to naming a god and saying, "I command you to appear here." Well, you'll be destroyed. Simple as that. Now, the angels are intermediaries between the gods and the mortals. Now, this is where it really comes from. It comes from ancient Egypt, and that's how it ended up in Greece. The gods, in the ancient Egyptian, the pharaonic religions, there is one supreme being, and then in the middle they have what are called turnaround gods. That's the modern term, but they're all the gods we're familiar with: Thoth, Apis, you know, uh, Ra, Seth, and all the others are in that. They're the ones that human beings can, say you don't go to the supreme God, the supreme universal God force. You go to a turnaround God who acts as a kind of an intermediary between your desires and the supreme God force. And that's exactly how the angels were seen in both by the Greek pagan magicians and by the Jewish Kabbalists. That they were but you still didn't demand or say summon them. You had to. They came to you. This is why they come to people at times of great sacrifice and pain, like in that movie, A Dark Song. The angel appears at the end just because she's gone through absolute hell, and it's you have to be kind of worthy for them to approach you, and the gifts are usually gifts of wisdom, and this kind of thing. And when they talk about protection, it's often protection from yourself, but that's why angels are worshipped today, because they're 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 basically reenacting a pagan adoption of Jewish angels that took place in before Jesus Christ and just shortly after. And they're just power forces to be tapped upon, archetypes. They have handy names and handy attributes, and it's something that's not dangerous as long as you know what you're dealing with. And a lot of these New Age type people don't know what they're dealing with, and that's why they're often deceived by demons and these dark entities who will tell them that, if I'm an angel, I'll tell you, and they'll do that. So that's what angels are. Are they pagan? Yes, probably, almost certainly, because the fact that they are even in the Abrahamic pantheon, both Judaism, Christianity, and three of them, and Islam, shows the fact that they shouldn't be in there because they're too powerful, to be not gods. This is the kind of thing. They're too powerful. Within the sort of like the supreme Abrahamic system, there's the God in heaven, and then there's just humans, right? Even an intermediary force in between both is absolutely sacrilege. So therefore, they were an incorporation of a previous pagan tradition, and that tradition was originally from ancient the turnaround gods from ancient Egyptian spiritual traditions, and then they made their way into. It was not, they were not incorporated into the European magic. The concept was that therefore, by the time Egypt was gone and Rome was in the Greece was gone, Rome was in the ascendancy. The incorporation of these foreign Jewish gods, angels, but they saw them as gods, into the pantheon proves that it was a familiar construct in the Eastern Mediterranean. So basically, that's what angels are. They were pagan gods with their oldest roots, from what we know, in ancient Egypt and they were the concept was adopted by early Judaism, possibly as a way of dealing with the loss of polytheism within early Judaism, because the first Jews wouldn't have adapted to a monotheism if they came from, and we know they came from a polytheistic culture so easily. So angels are a compromise. That's what angels are. They're a compromise, and that's what they are. They're a compromise within the Abrahamic religion for the lack of polytheistic deities representing specific archetypes, forces of consciousness, the universe, in terms of procuring desires and wishes. And you have to understand what they are. They're they're not there to be. They're not. These forces are not there to be called upon casually on a daily basis. These are deeply these the ancient. You see it in the ancient Greek text. These were deeply reverent rituals for the working with them. Another one that's part of that would be Oberon. Oberon is another entity that's and he's called the king of the fairies in English magic, in like cunning folk and things like that. But he has all the attributes of an angelic being, and he's used very, very similar. And his cult has kind of faded away since the 1700s, well, particularly with the Puritans in England. They cracked down on any kind of magic or anything like that. But yeah, so that's what your angels are. Pagan gods that were just renamed, but the archetypes and forces remain the same. Bottom line, treat them with reverence and respect, and they won't. And you think they're contacting you, chances are it's a demon. Okay, see you, bye.